We did talk about the thin blue line last time, but I was curious, like, if you could expand a little bit, because you said in your bio that you were passionate about criminal justice reform. Is there, besides the thin blue line stuff that we talked about, is there any other avenues of this that you're passionate about? And how did you become passionate about this?
So the first thing I got to say that kind of for the criminal justice reform, how I'll start with how I became passionate about it. Part of it was just being in the criminal justice system and kind of seeing how it really works. A lot of people don't get to see that. They like there's even a problem now on juries where so many people are watching, Blue Bloods, NYPD, like all of that now they think that's the reality. They think DNA evidence comes back in 24 hours that, you're going to solve a crime in 72 hours like that. And that's not the truth. For the most part, I mean, those are very rare that happens when you start talking about serious cases. So that's the first thing that I was kind of like, well, that's not right. But the being a part of the system, you also start seeing other things. And the first thing I try to explain to people is and I understand people are going to argue about this, but this is from my interview looking out, is that the criminal justice system is less against your race and more against you being poor. If you don't have money, you're going to get screwed quick. And I've seen that regardless of race, sex, culture, creed. Obviously, you do have some instances in there where it's obvious that, you have a judge that sentences person A to 2 years confinement, and then person B has done the exact same thing, exact same amounts, and they're getting probation. So you do have some instances like that. But for the most part, what I saw when I looked at the data, and you really start getting into the data, looking at individual cases, you start noticing money is the number one difference. I'm not sure 100% how to fix that, but there's got to be something. You can't constantly have the oligarchy that we have going on. Basically, it's like if you have the money, you can get away with whatever you want. And I love the best comedy version, but it's dead on, is Dave Chappelle, the Plead the Fifth skit. He's like, if drug dealers got treated like Wall Street, bankers and Wall Street bankers got treated like your drug dealer, the major differences you would see. And if you haven't seen it, I won't go completely into it, but go check it out. And it's dead on.
Which special is this? Like, in case I want to check it out.
No, this was one of his skits from the Dave Chappelle show.
Oh, never mind. I misheard you. So it's not for one of his specials. Okay, gotcha.
But he plays that out. And that's one of the biggest ones that I think we have to find some way to start making it even across the board. But the other aspect to it is we have to, that I'd really like to see is, even if first of all, we got to get rid of private prisons. You have 4 profit prisons out there, which is bullcrap. That was never supposed to be anything that we were supposed to do. Because states will sign contracts with these prisons saying, hey, you have to keep us stocked at a certain level of prisoners. Well, what do you think happens when your state starts getting cleaned up? They're starting to get their therapy. They're starting to get all these resources. And then all of a sudden you have this for-profit prison going, hey, we're falling short. We don't have people. Like, a governor's not going to say, okay, well, we'll pay that $10 million fine, every year because we didn't meet our quota. They're going to turn around and be like, hey, okay, start putting the poor people in jail again. So that stuff's got to go. The next one is we have to find some way to make our jails into not necessarily just a punishment house. Like, you have to have true reform. You have to start giving these people whether it's therapy or, the health, the doctors they need. But also the other thing, and I find this is something that it's always irritated me, is you have people that will go to prison for a crime. Like, say, for instance, if it was trafficking drugs, well, the state will find those people and take off the $1.25 a day they make working in prison. And then sometimes they'll extend their prison sentence until they pay off that fine. Well, if you're only making $1.25 a day working 8 hours a day, how long do you think that's going to take you to pay that off?
Yeah.
So I think New York City had a good idea that didn't go all the way through with, hey, if it is a nonviolent, and so New York was like, hey, we're going to go to bailless bonds. So your money isn't involved, which I think that's a good idea. But they kind of messed it up when they were like, oh, you shot somebody? Yeah, 72 hours. You can go back out. Well, they're going to shoot somebody again. I think if it's a violent crime, it should be no bail. Sorry. Regardless of who you are. Like, I don't care if you're Donald Trump or if you're Don Smith Jr. from 42nd Street. If it's a violent crime that that the DA's office thinks that they have enough evidence to prosecute you on under probable cause, then guess what? You don't get bail. You're staying in jail until we can figure this out.
Yeah, that I agree with that. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's any violent crime. So whether it's from assault all the way up to obviously homicide, things like that.
Now here's a question. You were asking about, not asking about, you were saying that a lot of it is because of money, why this stuff happens.
Yeah.
If a criminal has a family or they have a lot of money, can they have their sentence shortened because they have enough money to bail themselves out?
Well, it's not their sentence gets shortened. What happens is when they appear in front of the judge for their initial appearance, the judge will be like, oh, your bail is set at, we'll say $50,000, just as an example. Well, you only, to bond out is what it's called, to get out of jail, you only have to pay 10% of that. So if I have money and I only have to pay $5,000 to get out. So let's say both of us go up for, we'll say, simple assault. We both did the exact same thing. We're in a bar drinking. You hit a girl, I hit a guy. So we both get arrested. But I have monetary funds available to me. You don't. So now we both go in front of the judge. He both says $50,000 bail, which 10% is $5,000. So it's like, okay, I put the $5,000 down. Now, what do you have to do in order to get that $5,000? You have to call all your family. They have to put what money, and I'm just saying this for instance. I'm not trying to put anybody down, whatever. And I can use a fictitious person if you want. That's fine. But let's say, I come from a wealthy family. You don't. You come from, blue collar and everything. So now what happens is in order to get you out of jail, everybody has to take this extra money that they probably don't have to begin with and now put it all together to get you out of jail, or you stay in jail until your hearing, which could be 2 years.
Wow.
And that's part of the reason why New York City went to a bailless system, was because they were like, well, wait a second. Like, it's kind of like, the other way I try to explain it is a speeding ticket is essentially me paying a price to be able to drive that fast.
I never thought of it, but that's a good way to put it. It's like, hey, well, but I mean, I don't know how the law is, but don't you, if you have a certain amount of speeding tickets, doesn't that eventually pay off though? I mean, doesn't that eventually add up to where like, hey, you've had X amount of speeding tickets within a certain time, you're going to jail? Is that a thing or is that not a thing?
It can, but usually what happens is the fines just keep increasing.
So again, money. If they can say, hey, you caused a crime or you committed a crime by speeding, but we'll take your money and you'll be good to go. Yeah. So now, okay, well, now I know what it's going to cost me to go 85 miles per hour on the speedway. And you're right that like when you were saying about when people are already poor, it's like almost impossible to get out of that position. That's not even like, I don't know. I'm learning a lot from you about this. I didn't even really know much about this, about the jail system and everything like that. But I do that because I'm somebody who's struggled with finances with this student loan debt and everything like that. I do know that a lot of things are set up that way. Like even just like, when you're struggling with your bills, it feels like every company makes it worse for you. Like, so for example, if you go into, if you don't have any money in your bank and you go into withdraw, well, then they fine you, and then they fine you a week later. And then it's like, okay, well, now I'm fined $400. I already had zero to begin with. If I had zero to begin with, clearly I'm not in a place where like I can just come up with $400. $5 would have been good. You know what I mean? So there's that. And then there's just like other things. Like if you have low credit score, they're like, okay, we'll give you a lease, but we're going to double the price. So it's like, you can't lease a car or buy a car, finance a car for a low price if you have a bad credit score. Like, it's just like everything. If you're in that position, they know you're desperate and they'll do whatever they can to keep you there so that you can keep spending money. You know what I mean? Yep. Or like the Venmo instant transfer is another one too. Like,
oh yeah.
On Venmo, if you need your money right away and you're somebody who like desperately needs it right away, they charge you like, I don't know how much percentage, but like it's usually like 50 cents to like a couple dollars depending, you know, on how big it is. But I'm like, that's another one. It's like some people, if they need the money right then, like why should it cost money to get it? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's
my understanding of that is essentially you're paying a fee or tax, so to speak, to be put at the front of the line. So,
okay. Well, I guess I guess that's not so bad. That makes sense. But like the thing with the banks, like when you're getting like all those fees for already withdrawing, it's just like too much, you know?
The one that always confused me, and I had this happen. This is why I'm bringing this up is with banks is, say, for instance, you have a loan for a vehicle and when you first got it, you didn't have great credit and you're paying, we'll say $400 and you had like a 12% APR on that. And now, you know, you've got your credits taken care of or it's moving up. I'll put it that way. You're starting to fix yourself and you're like, man, if I can lower this car payment, it would really help me. Like, yeah, refinancing is never a good idea because you're essentially extending your loan and you're going to pay way more than the vehicle's worth. But sometimes it will help. Like if you can reduce that by even $100 a month, you know, you're like, oh, cool. Now I can, you know, it's a buffer zone for me. And I remember, I think I was probably 22, 23. I know I was still in the Army. And I remember I called my bank up and I was like, hey, I want to refinance for my vehicle and everything. And I was like, to make it lower. And I'd already like, you know, gone through their little online system to figure out like what I would be paying a month and everything. And they were like, oh, we can't you know, when they ran my credit and everything, they were like, oh, we can't refinance. I said, I don't understand. Like I've been paying, you know, we'll say $400. Like I'm willing to extend the loan and just pay a little less every month. I was like, that makes no sense. If I'm already paying $400, you know, I can cover $225 or $300. Yeah. They were like, yeah, but you know, we can't do that because your credit score. I was like, so I have a better credit score, but you're not willing to reduce the payment and extend the contract.
Because they're saying, oh, if your credit score is good, you could afford it, is like what they're basically saying.
Yeah. Well, that, and then also there's the whole FDIC and all the regulations and stuff. And I was like, I don't understand. Like I qualified for this with a worse credit score. Like, how is it not possible? And
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's some other stuff that you kind of start getting into and you're just shaking your head like, this makes no sense. Like, extend it out and give me a less payment so I can catch up on everything else.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate, but it seems like there's a lot of corruption in like all the fields, like medical, you know, psychology. It seems like there's so many fields that have like corruption when it comes to money. And I can understand. I was talking about this with somebody the other day. Like I try to stay positive, but at the same time, I also could understand why some people in the United States could be depressed and like have a negative view of society. When you start to really, I get in those, I'll be honest, sometimes I get into states of mind where I'm just like, this is all terrible. And I try not to get there. And I, unfortunately, I've had like depressions in my life where I have felt that way. And I'm like kind of coming out of one right now. But there's been moments in my life where I'm just like, there's so much corruption in the world that I don't even know how this is bearable. You know what I mean? So I don't blame people for getting to that place, especially if they're on the negative end of things.